Okay, good day everyone. Welcome to a short video on an overview of my Impulserc Micro Alien featuring an Emax Mini Magnum F4, Foxeer Predator, and some Emax red bottom 1306s. So the reason why I'm making this video is because I want to help out a friend of mine, Snyderman, who's also undertaking a Micro Alien build with the same stack and is having a few problems, unless he's sorted them out now while I've been at work, a few problems incorporating the Mini Magnum F4 stack into the essentially tiny space that is provided by the Micro Alien, and it is tiny. The primary reason for it being tiny is because the legs are actually inside the frame, as in are on top of the bottom plate, and that heavily restricts the amount of space that you got to play with by around about, say, even up to probably 5 mil, certainly 3 to 4 mil. So there's a couple of areas that we can save space in, and this build is really about I suppose finding millimeters to turn into what will eventually be around about half a centimeter, and that half a centimeter is the difference between the stock Emax Mini Magnum not being able to fit in the frame and being able to fit in the frame as in here, although it still remains a very, very tight fit. So the first things I want to go over are these standoffs. So if we have a closer look at the standoffs, I'll just elevate this a little bit. Actually, it should be okay. So in between the base plate and the ESC, so these standoffs are actually different to what's provided by the stack by the Emax stock configuration. So these standoffs actually come from the Impulserc frame itself, or the frame kit, and I've swapped them out. I've swapped the stock ones out for these, just purely because I've managed to create some space. I believe the stock ones were in the vicinity of around about 5 mil, and once again, millimeters is everything in this build. So using the stock standoffs on the base, or between the base plate and the ESC, there is a large one and a thin one. The same configuration between the ESC and the flight controller is seen in the middle there, being a large one and a thin one. And between the flight controller and the VTX, there's a large one, a medium one, and a thin one, which you can probably see. Now, there's a couple of reasons why you have to elevate the VTX so much, and one of those is able to be seen right through those capacitors there, and that is the speaker. So in between the speaker and the VTX, there's probably about a couple of millimeters now, certainly no more than 2. However, the primary reason for that height is the pin headers. And the pin headers, excuse me, are located up the back there, just in that vicinity. Trouble thing. So using the current, or the stock, I suppose, height of the pin headers, that VTX is unable to be lowered any more than it is currently. Now, if you were to remove those pin headers and use some, or solder on some wire, or direct solder some wire to make the connection between the flight controller and the VTX, then that VTX would be lowered by around about 2 millimeters, say, even 1 millimeter. And that millimeter is the difference between the LED seen on the top there, that kind of white squarey thing. The difference between that touching the bottom of the top plate and having some clearance. In the end, I decided not to direct solder the wires. I was pretty happy with the pin headers. And for the gains, I suppose I'd made enough gains in other areas that I didn't actually have to do that. Excuse me. Now, this is actually part of a trade-off itself. So if we turn the quad around, oh shit, dropped it. We can see under the, excuse my fingers, under the power cable is a little diode right next door, or right above a screw mount, and the clearance there is probably in the 1 to 1.5 millimeter range. So I thought it better, or I suppose more conducive to survivability, more robust, to have the clearance of that diode and the screw, rather than the LED on top of the VTX. I thought it better that in the event of a huge crash, I would smash the LED, and while I would not smash what could potentially be a critical element to the functionality of the ESC. So rather than break the ESC, I thought it better to break the light on the VTX. So that's that. Now the other area is at the back here. So at the back, let's try and find an angle. The motors, I suppose I might have to lift it up. Are the wires between the VTX, the flight controller, and the ESC. The black silicon wires sticking out the base of the quad there. So in the stock configuration, once again, the loop that those wires create is tucked in the space between the flight controller and the ESC. I suppose the act of tucking, or the fact that those wires are tucked in, means that another 2 or so millimeters can be gained if you essentially tuck those wires on the outside like they are now. So rather than protrude inside, creating extra space in between the flight controller and the ESC, they protrude outside, enabling that kind of reduction of space and gaining a lot of millimeters. I think that gave me like, I said 2 before, but it was probably 3. It could have even been a little more. Once again, I mean, if you were to direct solder those, then you could potentially gain some more space there as well. So yeah, that is pretty much how I managed to fit in the Emax Magnum F4 or Mini Magnum F4 into the Impulserc Micro Alien. I suppose the other features of this is I managed to tuck an RXSR into the space under there. My kids here, and I suppose other things about it are given that the VTX also comes with an MMCX, which I was pretty happy about, and the lack of any other kind of mounting options for the antenna, I was able to, or I have, directly zip tied the antenna to one of the standoffs, and I went with this configuration rather than the pigtail, because sorry, my kid's leaving now. Because I didn't want to lose essentially 3 dB of signal. So every connector that you have means 3 dB loss, which is essentially half your power. So minimizing those connectors retains that signal strength. Yeah, I suppose the other thing is running dual lock on the top of the frame. Now I love this stuff. I've been kind of combating the Uma Group fanboys, I suppose, on various forums. But I took this for a fly yesterday, and I forgot a battery strap. I was doing loops and rolls and dives and mad tricks aplenty, and batteries just did not come off. The only time it came off was in a pretty horrific crash actually, and then it was ejected. So I suppose that's the benefit of having a battery strap. But in terms of this this locking system versus Uma Group, I am very much a fan of this. This is 3M dual lock, I believe it's called. So that is essentially that. So Snyder Man, I hope this helps. Yeah, hope you're able to. I hope you kept those standoffs first and foremost, and I hope that you have success in getting the Emax Mini Magnum F4 stack into an Impulse RC Micro Alien. Cool. Let me know how you get on. Talk to you.